Okay, we're moving into local water done well. We have here Ashley Eder reporting, but I think Joe, will you report as well? Thank you.
Really, this was just about, again, working in the political environment that we're in. We are struggling at a national level to Te Whaimana recognised and included in legislation. So really just wanted to talk to council about, ensuring that we can support each other through this agreement to ensure that through all legislation, and in fact, the big one for us coming up, in fact, we've got local water done well over the line. Finally, I think just heard something yesterday where they've included most of the changes that we've asked for. Yeah. So that's been really good. But RMA obviously is a big one that's hitting us right now, where we're going to face the same kind of pushback from government. So I guess really keen to just request, I guess, that you join with us in supporting the upholding of Te Whaimana and our treaty settlements in legislation as it comes through.
Thank you.
So, just to clarify, did I hear you say in terms of local water done well, you're comfortable that being listened to, and these issues that you've listed in here, there's some quite significant ones that appears that
it does appear that yes. Obviously with the it's never done.
I know. Yeah.
But officials at this stage have agreed to pretty much all of what we've requested goes back into legislation.
But what do you think was going on there that it got in here in the first place?
We think, and from what we understand from officials, it was actually a ministerial direction. Because that's what we've got, that's, yeah. So they operated under a direction. Yeah. But I think, I don't know if we've told you before, but Waikato River, we took a delegation, 10 of us went to Wellington.
Okay.
Sat in front of the minister. Okay. So that's what it took, but shouldn't have to. Yeah. That's what they should be upholding anyway. So that's kind of our battle. So just, I guess it's about just making you guys aware, just when you're doing submissions and things like that, that we bang that Te Whaimana settlement drum in unison.
Yeah. I think in terms of the it has sort of been raised as much as, which is good, but it's only as good as how that sort of implements it.
Yeah.
And I see within the regional within Waikato Regional Council submission, there are concerns around some of the stormwater in terms of national limits that they're looking to change. And we too, in some respect, the regulation is sort of a bit up in the air at the moment. Where I currently see in the Local Government Act as a huge sort of driver how this is going to be implemented. And in these new CCOs, water service entities that they're proposing, we're seeing a bit, as Joe has raised, seeing a bit of push and pull amongst councils as to how to form these, largely driven by by balance sheets and or not carrying debt or providing more sort of to wider communities. I guess currently I see potentially it's probably more so for our staff an opportunity with the Local Government Act and the statement of expectation that's set out in setting up these new CCOs as a mechanism to which we can express as councils and jointly support how we wish to be supporting each other, but how Te Whaimana potentially is considered and or implemented within these CCOs. I don't know. That's potentially a book to look at. I'm not sure with the latest iteration if it has sort of further defined what's in the statement of expectation. But yeah, might be sort of where as an additional
Just
between it.
through a general comment was that the CCO issue is more of a district council.
Yes,
CLA.
yes.
We sort of have been, as part of the mayoral forum, I understand, we sort of taken a bit of a collaborative overview sort of approach.
Mm.
The CCO issue is really one where we're going to have to be talking
Mm.
territorial local authorities.
Mm.
And I'm wondering, given the authorship of the report in front of us, whether anybody on the staff also who was involved in writing this report wanted to make a comment.
Okay, we got quite much big time here.
Pete's person said, Chris wants to speak, or shall I? I guess, through the co-chairs, I just would like to reiterate what Councillor Clarkson said, the constitution of the CEO and the whole conversation around local waters done well is predominantly a territorial authority conversation. And our region, we've got 3 groups, so Waikato Hamilton have joined together, Waipa and a number of our other smaller territorial authorities joined together. We've got Thames Coromandel just having a conversation, not quite landed where they're going to go yet. Our role very much remains in that regulator space, but thankfully the territorial authorities have invited us in many of their conversations, and Brent Sinclair, our Director of Resource Use, our consenting side of the business, is dialed in really strongly. Our submission that we made to the Water Services bill was probably one of the most detailed in these submissions I've seen in my decade or so of the regional council, and it needed to be. We've done too much, we've invested too much in Lake Taupo, in the Waikato and Waipa catchment, to have it undermined by a blanket approach. For us, our team is popping together a submission to be considered by council. The first thing is around our resilience and durability of our regional communities. Second thing is around pushing costs to our ratepayers, and third thing is 235 minute. And that's basically our formula with any of our submissions. As it was with Water Services bill, we have heard through conversations with officials that there's been a lot of, I guess, education with officials around a blanket approach will not work. It kind of offends on many levels. Those of us that have to regulate, form policy, engage, let alone just the investments in the catchments. So I guess I'd just give you assurance that we know we are working through a process with a bunch of ministers and officials who are unfamiliar with Te 35 minute. I'm not saying we're experts, but we've spent 12, 13 years trying to get it right. And we can always do better, and just helping people understand in terms of the previous comment around just in terms of our JMA and amendments to the RMA in the cabinet paper. The government does make some very clear statements around RM reform and links to treaty settlement, and these are minutes of cabinet, so they are clauses we're taking people back to time and time again. So I guess just want to give you the confidence that particularly around this Water Services bill and our role as the regulator, you'll see in the submission, which was very detailed, things like 35-year consent time. We know that it just isn't clever. So we'll wait to see. We know they're working very, very speedily down in Wellington to get this bill out. And in terms of our role and how that impacts, we will carry on fulfilling our duties and requirements as we do as the regulator. Talking to Brent yesterday briefly, he said what he sees with the new legislation, there's some real opportunities for our territorial authorities to work better together as all of us. So that was really heartening. And Brent said he's seen a live example when Watercare combined with Waikato District Council and the lift and the openness of the conversation was at a next level. Not saying it wasn't great with Waikato District, because it was, but just that ability to take a bigger picture. So, yeah, I don't know, Chris, if there's anything I left out of that. Thanks, Tracy.
No, thank you. The tautoko, everything that's been said. I guess from my perspective, the real thing here is that intersect between the RMA, this new type of legislation, and the river settlement legislation. And I mean, it's been well said by all of you that I think there's a lack of understanding about how everything hangs together. You know, having the interim decision of PC1 popping out of court as well. There's a whole lot of dimensions to this. I think there's been a lot of education for people, and I think there's a lot more to come. And as Tracy says, as a council, that we go out of our way to try and help push the message that Te Ture Whaimana is our primary driver, you know, for what we're trying to achieve in the Waikato and Waipaha catchments. And I guess it's that in terms of what the government is saying, they're trying to get a more effective and efficient RMA system. They're trying to make it easier. They're trying to let people enjoy their property rights, but achieve everything else too. We've got this plethora of national direction that's coming at us that we're having to get our heads around. We've got a bit of machinery to look at it. And Trace, it'd be fair to say that, you know, it's we're paddling pretty hard to keep up with it all at the moment. And let alone yourselves as iwi authorities also trying to get your head around all of this. I guess the more we talk and work together, the easier it can be for all of us. But I do think it's an intersect of three primary pieces of legislation. It's hard to look at one on its own right.
Thank you, Chris. If I could just add to that, there's also the kind of death by 1,000 cuts where the government is pulling out things like the commercial vegetable growing thing that's happening at the moment. They've taken that out of that, but not, they've kind of did a little sidebar, which is a really dangerous piece of legislation and cuts across Te Ture Whaimana completely. So I think there are, I guess it's just those things that we just need to make sure we probably have a bit more dreamed up on this. Yes.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you for all of the comments. It's an interesting space, as you say. It's nothing silo. There are impacts that ripple out and will impact or other pieces of legislation changes that will impact. There's that overlay of impact. So it's been our gripe. Charoa River Iwi Trust, it's been our gripe around with the ministers around having to retrofit everything into what they've already released, their draft. It would be so much easier if that consultation occurred beforehand, which is what our settlement dictates should happen. But of course, we're having real difficulty. We're spending a lot of our resources that should be spent on the health and wellbeing of the Waikato River, its tributaries and environs, on actually having to seek legal opinion or just submit a number of bills that are, or the changes within legislation that are happening all at the same time. We do not have the machinery, as you so well put it, Tracy, to be able to manage this. It's quite a strain, and it makes for very unhappy, grumpy people, and certainly not at council, but towards those that are making these proposals without actually consultation with iwi first. And we have had to remind territorial councils that the settlement is not with, and the JMAs are not with CCOs, they are with councils. So we need to be at the decision-making table, and we need to know how they are going to address being able to oversee the CCOs in respect to our settlements and what that engagement will look like. And of course, they're not really listening at this particular moment, but we are expressing that quite early in the piece. And the territorial, it was rather interesting that the regional plan had reduced the territorial councils to a chapter. Is that correct? Your regional plan? There's only a chapter in there, and actually councils have said that themselves, that they're not certain on what their functions will be going forward. And so there is, I know, a lot of angst with district councils at this particular moment.
Are you referring to the government's proposed reform?
Yeah.
No, not the regional.
Oh, sorry, no. They proposed, no, but it's reduced to one chapter, which actually flags that that importance or their role has been reduced, well, has the potential to be reduced significantly. So we're watching.
There's
We're
a
watching
real
that space.
proposed regulatory role, I think, too, from memory.
Yeah, Alan's being removed, consenting.
Well, we need to know because we have, settlements and agreements with councils. And it's a very interesting space. And I guess a lack of trust, given that we have not been, there's been no consultation, there's no sharing of what direction the Crown are taking.
And I think what's equally important, we understand or gauge as TARIT, how and where the opportunities of advocacy are in supporting council, obviously, through this, where we may agree that, jointly on those key points that have been raised, whether it's through local water done well. Think too.
Now, I think that comes back to my next point, and that's around sharing submissions. It's always good to know beforehand, how councils are feeling and what's in their submission, because we just do not have the capacity, the capacity to be able to reinvent the wheel every feels like month. So, it would be really, and I think we've had these conversations before, Chris and Marley, just around kind of sharing submissions and being able to support each other in that way, in the sense that Delia is speaking about as well, or referring to as well, around how we can support each other, and it should be in our submissions as well.
You're comfortable with how that's going? Because I think that's the intent, so.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Stacey?
Yeah, thank you, and I was just going to make the point, so we've had our Lokawa co-governance committee and Waikato co-governance committees in the last 2 or 3 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
So it's been really good to hear the same consistent messages. At Lokawa, Anaru talked through our submission process, and we do distribute our draft submissions. We try to, I should say, and one of the messages back from the Lokawa co-governance committee was perhaps something a little bit more formalised, not quite as, hey, if we've got time and we remember to, because cognizant that, the government's not giving any of us enough time to look at some of these things sometimes.
That's right.
1.5 days, half a day being the weekend was their best effort last year.
Yes.
But it's something we're looking at, the team who puts all the submissions together, looking at building it into the process in a more formalised way. We are aware that we have a group of, across our entire organisation, so those of us involved in policy and consenting, our integrated catchment guys who are out there doing the work, but also some of our biggest consent holders. So across the organisation, also with tūtahanga from Tairanga Whenua, looking at what does this mean? So we've got good spread. We know our iwi partners don't have a bunch of people sitting behind you to do that. And we've also had a conversation with Antoine and Justine at Waikato River Authority and said, look, we will distribute as much information as we can. We'll get it out. Very difficult for us to co-lodge submissions because we've all got different masters, but we can understand where each other are coming from. And if we know that those key messages are reiterated in other submissions, then, that's powerful. So we're looking at that now. The other thing I was just thinking of while I was sitting here is each week we have an RM reform group, which is held on Teams. And it may be that we'll go back and talk to the team and say, could we invite, you know, iwi staff, it's an hour, but you will pick up some of the technical stuff that we've discussed, and, you know, it's an opt-in if you want to, or if you don't, kind of thing. I'll go back and have a chat with staff about that.
Thank you, Tracy. And going back to our first kaupapa in that old topic that we had was around the JMA review, and I think that allows, you know, some of those changes. It actually allows and recognises us working together as a collective, having that collaborative approach. So thank you. And I do thank you, Joe. Thanks for, you know,
Just carrying on the local would have done the councils right now, so.
much appreciated. Thank you.
Thanks, good to see you. Cheers.
So if I could, I'm happy to move from the chair that this report be accepted. If I could have somebody to second, please. Thank you, Stu. All in favour? Carried. Kia ora.
Move on to the freshwater policy review. And, Tracy's sitting there waiting to go, I can see.
Yeah, you can see, you know, what's coming, yeah. Everybody's neck. Just call it a presentation.
Cheers. Pretty good.
And a muffin by now street.
Oh, a bit too far away. It would look too obvious. Should have put them back here.
So this report is that we've got on the agenda is to give you an update of what's happening in the freshwater space. A lot of what's on the agenda has been overtaken by the events of last week. So the arrival of an interim decision on Plan Change 1 from the Environment Court, which was a pretty, seminal moment for us. And the announcement of national direction. So I've just put together a quick PowerPoint. I won't go through every single slide because I get sick of my own voice, but Rob, let's just turtle through. The next one, thanks, mate. So the decision landed. It is an interim decision, so we're not quite at the end. It's 376 pages. There is some homework in there for Waikato Regional Council and for some of the other parties. I'm not quite through it all, but there are a lot of people poring over it. What does it mean? What do we have to do? We're going to go to the next slide. So it is an interim decision. So there's about another 12 months at least, I would say, until we get a final decision from the court. As Chris mentioned before, with the government tattooing around with what it's got on its plate, it's making quite a few things quite a challenge for us. Let alone our poor landowners who are going to say, well, how the bloody hell does this thing work? You know, we've got these provisions, new provisions, interim provisions, new stuff, and then government's coming across with a whole new RM regime. So, you know, they're the people I feel for, and I feel for our regulatory team and our guys out in the field on the ground, because they're the people say, oh, what does it mean? What do I do? So there's still quite a process to go through. It's still going to cost our ratepayers and all our parties a lot, as I keep saying. Tipper told me about 10 years ago, it took us 150 years to get here. It's going to take us another 150 to get where we want. Just hang in there, we'll get there. So please, Tipper. Thanks. We'll go to the next one. Brooke will send this out, so you've got it anyway.
Oh, that would be great. Thank you.
So these are definitely not council policy, but my quick kind of reflections when I got it that night and scooted home and read it. Foremost and really strongly, it's underpinned by the primacy of Te Ture Whaimana, which is really powerful. It's a powerful message for everybody, even for some people who don't want to hear it. It is powerful, it is front and centre, it is from the court, not the government, from the court. It's recognition and acknowledgement of the importance of whangamarino wetland as such a critical last bastion of a wetland of significance, and the need for those who live around that wetland to probably alter the way they do business. And there's a whole conversation and a richness in there that we'll need to work with those landowners on. Recognition of the complexity of the operating environment. So the court said, look, crikey, there's so much going on, but irrespective of what's going on, you've got an issue that needs to be addressed. So don't shy away from it. It builds on the risk-based approach of plan change one. So in each of throughout the Waikato and Waipa, there are sub-catchments and there are different issues in different catchments. We know down in the upper Waikato, different issues over in Waipa, sedimentation versus non-point discharges from dairy intensification. It recognises that and the court says, yep, no, you kind of got that right. There's some good direction provided. One of the key issues that the court identifies is WRC's role in getting good information for people. You can only make good decisions if you've got good information. And lastly, the courts tried to be as pragmatic as possible, I think, given some of the very technical issues they were navigating their way through. Thanks, Scott. So that's just a quick, here's what you could jump to if you want to. Some of the overarching issues that the court really looked into was just providing more clarity in the plan. Tangata Whenua ancestral land was well canvassed by the court. We know some parties were wanting those provisions of the plan removed. Other parties were wanting more flexibility. So the court has given that a thorough going over. I haven't jumped into that bit yet, but to have a look at it and see what it means. But that was well canvassed. As was that last bullet point there, just making people aware that this is a job done. You know, and we always said this was one step on the 80-year journey. And the courts come out and said future land users need to be aware that, you know, more reductions are going to be required in the future, more provisions. So again, it's from the court. It's not from anyone in the process or from government. It was a signal from the court. So yeah, that's pretty strong. Thank you, Rob.
This will be really helpful, the presentation.
Yep.
Thank you.
And so what our response is, I mean, we're all kind of scratching our heads to be fair, but we put a press release out pretty quickly so we didn't have people thinking, oh my God, I need to get consents, or oh my God, I need to do this, because that's what people think when they hear themselves. So just letting people know, hey, we've got it, we're on a journey, we're working through it. We'll be updating our website, if not today, then definitely early next week, because we've got field days next week where a lot of people ask a lot of questions. You know, what does interim mean? Where are we at the process? What does it mean to me? We've got, yeah, as I said, probably another 12 months before the court. But there is a lot in there. I'll just...
You've got there to develop a more current marked up version of PC1.
Yeah.
Is there potential that will change once the interim is removed and you go into the just final decision?
Yeah. What that will do is it'll capture as much as we can capture out of the directions from the court. So
it's more around direction.
Yeah, so there's 13 pages of directions from the court. Some of them they have said change policy XYZ to read this. Others that said WRC, we want to be more flexible in this space, go away and find us some solutions. Everybody else will get to comment on that, and that will be done through Jamie Ferguson, I think your lawyer. He's got all this info. Katarina did ask me for it direct because she said it needs to come quicker from us. And
is that possible?
Yeah. Yep. I sent it. Yeah. I mean, if you haven't got it, we will definitely just send it to. Yep. So send it to.
Thank you.
No worry. And yeah, so what that version will do was, will say, here's all the stuff we know we can change now. Here's the areas that are still kind of at question. And there are some fundamental things that the courts ask for. What has been great from our perspective is we have an environment court judge who has been hit with a few health issues. So there was a spectre of this matter potentially being handed on to another judge. So we're pleased that we were able to get the interim decision through with Judge Kirkpatrick, and hopefully he'll be able to hear the rest of it. So whilst it's not a final decision, it's real positive. If I can just read out just back where I had those 4 things. Clause 15 of the decisions, it says Plan Change 1 must deliver environmental improvements that will contribute to the achievement of the vision and strategy of Te Ture Whaimana. It will be the first stage of many. Mitigation measures to be implemented in accordance with Plan Change 1 will require time for investigation, planning, consenting, financing, implementation, and monitoring. Any timeframes in Plan Change 1 must be realistic in terms of practicality and affordability, so that's good. And the court makes a very clear statement that, based on the evidence, dairy farming activities in particular have been enabled through current plan provisions with limited controls. Reversing the effects will take much longer than the term of Plan Change 1 and will not be achieved without significant social and economic consequences for farmers, growers, their families, staff and communities, and the regional economy, the extent of which are not known. So there's a real balancing there of Te Ture Whaimana front and centre, but practicality and just understanding we're not going to have it all done by Tuesday.
It's interesting though that the interim, that point raises the social and economic impacts, of farmers as a sort of weighing up, valuing against what the expectation might be, but actually in an early interim decision, they've said it's likely that we need to take that into consideration. And I think there is a lot of work in considering or assisting, and that's probably where the submission comes in. The economic and potentially environmental and cultural cost that might help bring that, raise that picture, actually understand what those costs sort of are. I think I've read that economic impact, which was driven by NIWA on the Golden Clam on the Waikato River. And I thought, well, I'm not sure if that sits with, as experts in science, to understand what the issue is in terms of providing economic impact. But I think there was some good points raised in that to, in that area, I guess we want to look at sort of current reports, but
One of the challenges through the development of Plan Change 1, and I think one of the challenges in our organisation's response to Golden Clam is nobody actually likes the size of the number. Because if you're going to truly do that economic assessment, the size of the number is significant. But the environment has been carrying the mortgage for a long time.
Wow.
So,
Yes, the argument might be, in terms of clawing back to retain that balance first and reducing of, consenting, but
I think also it's around the reality of the first NIWA report that was released around what it actually will take to get the Waikato River back to, to an acceptable state. And then the money that was actually released to be able to do that. It's a lot longer than what they were saying. This is an 80-year journey, not a 30-year journey, and that was quite explicit in the NIWA report.
A lot of the appellants completely lost sight of that and the last 10 years.
And I guess our role has been, to look at the normal distribution curve, look at the continuum of all the views and go, cool, we've got that, guys. how we going to collectively move forward. And I guess the one thing that came through from the court decision for me is there's that recognition it's everybody's responsibility.
Absolutely.
Which is
Absolutely. Yeah.
Brooke, you can just total through to the next one. So this is just and I know your staff will be across it, but this is that first tranche of the reform. So we've got all the changes in national direction that the government's trying to get through, even before we look at a new RMA. Now this stuff, so this is what was popped out of Pōneke last week, and we're waiting for one more this week, which is going for growth, so the housing one. So there are three there. Freshwater is the one that I jumped into pretty much straight away. But the primary sector one, I had a look at that earlier in the week, and there's some fish hooks in there. So I recommend looking there, because there's a few things buried that you have to kind of lift up a couple of rocks and have a look for, but they're in there. One of the things that's also important, and Joe talked about commercial vegetable production, one of the section 5, which is the appendix for freshwater, it actually has those provisions that if they are enabled through this bit of reform, that will be operative from day one. Really important to be aware of those from a iwi perspective, and particularly from a JMA partner perspective, because they're not things we can sit and have a conversation about in our JMA in terms of crafting the policy. They go down on day one and they're operative. We don't have a say. Nobody has a say.
Oh, right. And it's from the primary sector.
It's the freshwater.
Oh, sorry, freshwater.
So enabling commercial vegetable production.
Oh, yes.
Enabling water storage. Some amendment of farmer-facing regulations, which are related to wetlands, and some mapping of surface water risk areas. So just, it's kind of a trick for those of us who have read it. Have a good look at section 5 appendices. We just flip to the next one, Brooke.
It was interesting, the source water, because it sort of ties in with the different legislation.
Yeah.
The local water done well.
Yeah, and for the source water, so it's our what they're suggesting, and we've been waiting for this one for a while, is that it's the responsibility of regional councils to map those source water risk management areas. When they first suggested it, we said, you realise that's all of the Waikato, but with the formula and the method that they're applying. So they've gone back, they have refined it, which I think is good. So there are different zones now, 1 through to 3. It's something we've always known would happen. We just want to make sure that, again, it's done sensibly and it's done over the right period of time. Because if they give us a truncated period of time, then we know there'll be a truncation in terms of quality, and we want to do the job. Next slide, Frog. So these are the things in the freshwater management package that they're looking to, and I was saying to somebody, it looks like the word rebalancing is our new word. Rebalancing, because of health and safety this week as well. So if we look at
Revisiting the past.
Yeah, rebalancing, providing, enabling, simplifying. Those words are quite powerful.
Unearthing the Noah's Ark.
For me, there is some good in there. The third bullet point down, providing flexibility in the national objectives framework. The national objectives framework at the moment is really complex, and she's a bit of a blunt axe across everybody. You know, irrespective of whether the gravel streams of the Coromandel or some of our large rivers in the region, there is one kind of national objectives framework, values, attributes. And Mike Scarsbrook, who's our manager of sciences, has advocated really strongly for a regional and sub-regional approach. So we think that flexibility in there is good.
So, sorry, are you talking about the NOF?
The NOF, yeah. That flexibility to focus on the values and attributes specific to particular waterways. You know, dissolved oxygen mightn't be an issue somewhere else. Sedimentation mightn't be an issue. What we don't want, I guess, is a lowering of the standards.
That's right.
So that's something, but we've had some really good conversations with some of our primary sectors, and I would say, you know, in the majority, we're on the same page. We have said, and Chris and I have been in meetings with our primary sector. Have you talked with iwi? You know, it's really important that they don't think talking with us is talking with iwi. But I think that's where a real richness of conversation can occur. In respect to the commercial vegetable growing, we have had some staff from Ministry for the Environment approach us. Our first messages were, if you're looking to make something easier, how have you taken into account Te Ture Whaimana, and how have you talked to dairy and sheep and beef in the catchment, because somebody will need to pick up the load. So, and then that was even before we had conversations about some of the things we were struggling.
And how was that received?
They nodded. They knew. But we just said, look, and then now that we've got Plan Change 1, we've just had to take them through that. So I won't go through the rest of the slides, but there's a whole bunch of other slides that picks through each of these. As I said, we would definitely get our draft submission out to you as soon as possible. I'll talk to the team about extending the invite to those sessions. So submissions on that package close on the 27th of July, which is a Sunday. We are looking to take our submission through to our full council. We have a submission subcommittee, but this space for me is of such importance that it needs to go through our full council for consideration. In any way we can help, because I am aware of the resources that we have, even our resources are scuttling around trying to unpick it and understand it. So I know we're more privileged than you guys with what we've got. But anything you need, Nikki and the team can just give us a bell.
Excellent. That's great. It was so helpful, Tracy.
Yeah, so thanks again, Tracy.
No worries.
Always the one step ahead of us. Keep trying.
No, I don't know about that.
We have little debate sometimes about what's going on, don't we? That's good. So I think, are there any more questions or comments? Are we okay? We'll close this and receive that report with thanks. Second up.
Yep.
Yep. All in favour?
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
This was the information that Angus so we might have 6.3 at this stage.
Okay.
We've moved to the
Okay.
presentation.
Yeah, so we don't have Angus available, Angus McKenzie, so we're going to have to leave that one, I believe, and move quickly to iwi feedback mechanisms.
Thank you. So is that level?
Yep.
Yeah. That'll be great. Oh my, honey, my. He did it.
Just a brief and hopefully enjoyed the report. I'll take the paper as read. So as the paper points out, you know, we're continually seeking to get feedback from all the parties that we interact with, and iwi are the most important group of people for Waikato Regional Council. And to be fair, we've struggled over the years I've been here, at least, to be able to get a constant or consistent and reasonable view of how iwi feel about the relationship with the regional council. And so when we do get that information, it's generally a very low response rate, and it's hard for us to say this is how we're doing. So what we're attempting with this process, and this is very much in the infancy, is to pilot an approach with both TARIT and with Waikato Tainui to use a platform that we use widely across the organisation to gain feedback from customers. Now, we don't regard iwi in any way, shape or form to be like a customer. We regard iwi as a partner, but we think that the methodology that we use to get that customer sentiment and insight is really useful and has helped us over the years to be able to identify areas of concern, areas that worked well, and to adjust the way we accordingly. So this platform is called Ask Nicely. It's a strange name, but it's an effective platform, and it does it all automatically for us. It uses, in this case, we'll be providing a QR code, which we'll put up in a second, but it uses a methodology called the Net Promoter Score, which is universal and used worldwide. It's based on a 10-point scoring system and provides room for verbatim comments that reflect how people feel about the situation that they've just experienced, encountered, or just experienced. So for this particular effort, if you feel the urge, you can just get your camera up on your phone and you'll get the QR code on the screen there. We'll give you a link directly to the survey. Like I said, it's only 3 questions, scoring out of 10. Question to look at your overall satisfaction of the encounter, and we're thinking about the most recent encounter you've had, and in this case, it would be this one, or something closely related to this one. What is your overall satisfaction of that encounter? How much did you trust us in respect to the information and the way that we presented it? And how much effort did you have trying to get what you were seeking from us? So those 3 key questions are regarded as being deeply insightful and give us an indication of where we could work and to improve. And the verbatim comments that come through are really helpful, because quite often they will provide deep insight into either a very positive reaction that people have experienced or very negative one. And sometimes they're quite direct and tailored, and that's what we're seeking. Subject to, I guess, your view of how this is and how effective this process might be. Our plan is to deploy it to all of our staff at a operational level, and when they interact with your staff in the field, then they'll be offering them that opportunity as well to provide that feedback. And then we'll be able to see how across the whole network is this working in terms of the relationship at the governance level and at a service delivery level, and what might we do to make it better, as opposed to once a year or every couple of years we send a survey out, which people don't have time to do, and gives us a fairly skewed view of how the relationship is operating. So I guess that's the intent of this, and Brooke will send the presentation out so you've got the QR code so you can share it amongst your own members. And we are really genuinely looking for this feedback, and Marley and the team will be the owners of this feedback. And so they'll be using that to tailor how the organisation is. And some things we can't influence, they just can't. But where we can, our objective is to prioritise and to make an improvement. That's the concept. And like I say, Waikato Tainui and TARIT are who we were testing it with, and subject to the feedback we get, we'll either tweak it or dispense with it. So that question.
Are there any questions?
Oh, I was going to say, what number should I give you guys this morning? You've got to pick me up.
It'd be a overall satisfaction 0.
Seriously, I was just having a tittle, and every score has to be accompanied with a comment code. So
I don't know if my understanding is the way I think it's set up is that you can override not having to comment or just enter.
Because it would seem a bit frustrating to get a low score, for example, without a backup comment, so you can understand why.
That's the objective. Is generally our experience is that people will make a comment if they're scoring right. And sometimes they're quite direct. And it's relatively offensive, but that's how people are responding to that experience that they've just had. And what it's enabled us to do from a customer perspective is to see areas within the organisation that are consistently poorly rating, and sometimes it will even come down to individuals or a team in the way that and an education might be required. Often it will be about the timeliness or the attitude. And so there are things we can fix, like attitude and behaviours we can deal with.
Well, I just had a fiddle in, it's pretty easy, it comes up straight away, it's pretty easy to use.
Yeah, and one of the other issues is oversampling people too often as well. So we will be looking at how do we limit that so that it's not consistently barraging the same people. Or other feedback we'd be looking at is there bias as staff, for example, if you're wrong at trying to influence the outcome. It's not a trade-off, it is meant to be objective and genuine feedback.
Is there a time frame on the?
No, we'll be reading constantly. So you mean for this pilot or for this phase?
For this phase?
Will be, Marlene's team will be, once they've collated the initial feedback that we gather, whatever it is,
Okay.
will provide feedback to this group, probably outside of the meeting, but it may be a formal report back at the next meeting. Just let you know what we're hearing, what we're seeing. So, yeah,
This is quite a generalized approach. I mean, it's obviously a new system, platform, but it's quite sort of general outside of comparing it to the survey that went out about how well the JMA is working. I thought that was really good.
Yeah.
You know, and obviously that's assisted the staff to sort of look at sort of key areas as we're viewing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's support that at that level that the council are thinking. You know, it's good to help guidance at different levels. I think that timing around or encouraging those, because we do have a lot of our kaitiaki out there in our waterways with council staff members, science. So, you know, I think capturing the feedback as much as it as so I see the benefit at that time. I think is important versus wait till you're back at your desk and use just totally priorities.
All the science tells us that the most valuable and actionable feedback is feedback received as close as possible to the time of the interaction. And people have got it front of mind. That's all I've got to add.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, and I'm happy to know from the chair report the every feedback report we accepted. Thank you, Joe. All in favour? Aye. All right, thank you. So I think that draws our meeting to a close. Yeah. We'll do our Karakia Whakamutunga. And I got some lunch.
Yes, I'll just see if they can deliver it early, but it's due to come at 11.
We booked it for 11:45. We're too efficient.
Too efficient.
But that's okay. Just
following that up.
Well, we had that one cancellation, that helped out efficiency.
I think it did. So I think if there's nothing further to discuss, we'll close with our Karakia Whakamutunga. It'll give everyone an opportunity to head to the bathroom, do what you need to do, but please stay and have some lunch. Kia noi tātou, kia tātou katoa, te ata whai o tō tātou ara kia ihu karaiti, me te aroha o te atua, me te whiwhi nā tahitanga ki te wairua tapu, aki. Amen.
What?
Very interesting.